Hey guys, welcome back again. We are ready for part 4 now of lesson 7, which is still all about determining theme. So we're going to be on page 64 and 65 in our workbook today. So if you need your workbook out, go ahead and pause the video. Make sure you have your workbook out. Make sure you have a pen or a pencil to write and follow along with me. And just like I said, we're on page 64 and 65. So when you're ready, let's go ahead and begin. So as you guys know, the first thing that we do is rewrite the title of the lesson at the top of the page. And as you know by now, the title of this lesson is Determining Theme. Okay, and we know that determining means to figure something out. And we know that theme is the lesson that is learned by the main character. And just as a refresher, another word for main character is protagonist. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and read the directions and see what this page wants us to do. And our directions say read the story, use the study buddy, and the close reading to guide your reading. Okay, so that tells me that we're going to go ahead and get ready to look at the text. And at the top of the text, it tells us the genre, and the genre of this is realistic fiction. So everything that we have looked at for this lesson has been realistic fiction. So hopefully by now you were comfortable with identifying something that's realistic fiction. But if you're not, let's talk about it one more time. So remember, realistic fiction is fiction. So remember, it's made up, but it's something that is realistic. It's something that could potentially happen in real life. So it could happen in real life. And the characters, the setting, the conflict, the situations, all of that is believable. So not only could it happen in real life, it's believable. Okay. So the title of this text is The Substitute, and it's by Bailey Sebastian. So let's go ahead and box in the title of our story. And the paragraphs are already numbered for us. We have 9 paragraphs. So before we look at our study buddy that's out to the side, I want us to read the text once together, and then we're going to go back and look at the study buddy and the closer reading. So let's read the text one time together first. Follow along with me. When Layla walked into math class on Thursday, the room was in an uproar. Although the students usually took their seats immediately and opened their books quietly, today they were gathered in groups chatting loudly and laughing. Layla stopped just inside the doorway, but then quickly spotted the reason for the change. Instead of Miss Vask, a rather short older gentleman with glasses, perched crookedly on his nose, stood at the front of the class. Layla did a double take. The man was her neighbor, Mr. Marrero. She and her family had gone to pay their respects after his wife had passed away last year, and she remembered him telling an amazing story about surviving an emergency landing during a transcontinental flight. Hey, Layla, wasn't Teen Idol awesome last night? Yelled Jason. Yeah, stammered Layla. Jason didn't usually talk to Layla. The popular kids just wrote her off as that quiet girl. Layla bit her lip. She wanted to keep talking, but she felt bad for Mr. Marrero, and she was embarrassed about her class's behavior. Without realizing it, Layla reached over and flicked the light switch, just like Miss Vasks used to do when the class was unruly. Suddenly silent, every classmate turned to stare at her, and Layla's cheeks burned bright red. But then she smiled at the substitute and said, "Hello, Mr. Marrero." Mr. Marrero focused, and then recognition dawned, and he responded, "Oh, my neighbor. Layla, right?" Layla heard someone snicker and knew it was time to blend back in or help Mr. Marrero. She took a deep breath. Mr. Marrero, will you tell us about the time you were on a jet that crash landed in the ocean? 30 mouths gaped open and 60 eyes looked with curiosity at Mr. Marrero, soon to be their new favorite substitute. Okay, so now that we have read it together, we're ready to look at the study buddy. So I'm going to draw a box around our study buddy and draw an arrow from the study buddy part of the directions to the box I drew around the study buddy itself. And our study buddy says, the author includes specific details to help me understand what kind of person Layla is. I'm going to underline clues that tell me something about her. So based on the text, we know that Layla is kind of a quiet girl. She is definitely not the most outgoing in her class, and our study buddy wants us to realize that. So the study buddy has underlined a section of the text for us, and that's in paragraph 4. And it says the popular kids just wrote her off as that quiet girl. So this part of the text lets us know that Layla is usually quiet. She doesn't really draw attention to herself. She blends in with the crowd. She doesn't do things to set herself apart. So now that we know a little bit about Layla's personality, let's look at our first close reading box. And it says, Layla has mixed emotions about the situation. Underline the sentence that explains why she feels the way she does. So right now I want you to go look through the text and see if you can find the sentence that explains why Layla feels the way she feels. And when you find it, I want you to underline it. So go ahead and do that for me now. When you come back, we're going to look at it together. Okay, so hopefully you were able to find that on your own, but let's go ahead and talk about it together. So here is one section of the story that shows how Layla has mixed emotions and why she feels the way she feels. In paragraph 5, it says Layla bit her lip. She wanted to keep talking, but she felt bad for Mr. Marrero, and she was embarrassed about her class's behavior. So this explains that she wants to keep talking, but she also feels bad, and she's embarrassed about how her class is acting. And this lets us know that Layla is she's kind of torn right now. These are her mixed emotions. So this is how she feels with her mixed emotions. Okay, so now let's look at our last close reading. And it tells us, how does Layla change at the end of the story? Circle the sentences that describe when Layla makes a decision to act differently. Okay, so we know that something about Layla is changing throughout the story, and she is a different person than she was at the beginning. So I want you to look through the text now and see if you can circle the sentences that describe when Layla makes a decision to act differently. So circle the sentence that shows when she makes the decision to act differently. Go ahead and do this for me now, and when you come back, we're going to discuss it together. Okay, so hopefully you were able to find that on your own, but let's go ahead and discuss it together. So in paragraph 5, it says, without realizing it, Layla reached over and flicked the light switch, just like Miss Vasks used to do when the class was unruly. So this shows how Layla is acting differently than she usually acts. So we know that Layla is a quiet kid. She doesn't really do anything to draw attention to herself. And when she does this is her decision to act differently. So that supports her decision to act differently. And we also know in paragraph 8, it says that she took a deep breath. So she is about to speak out and ask Mr. Marrero to tell the class the story of the time that he crash landed into the ocean. And when she takes the deep breath, that lets us know that she's about to act differently than she usually acts. She's taking that deep breath to compose herself because right now she's a little embarrassed after she's flicked the lights on and off to get the class's attention. She may be a little embarrassed. Her cheeks are turning red. And whenever she takes a deep breath, we know that she's about to advance herself even further to act differently in order to help Mr. Marrero get the class back in order. So this is how we annotate the text, and we have analyzed it pretty thoroughly. So now let's go ahead and look down at the questions. So it tells us, use the hints on this page to help you answer the questions. So out to the side, we have 3 hint boxes, and we also have 3 questions. So that tells me that each hint is going to be used for each question. So hint box number 1 goes with question number 1, hint box number 2 goes with question 2, and the last hint box goes with question number 3. So let's go ahead and look at number 1. Let's look at the hint first. It says, to help me answer the first question, I'm going to look back to the text I underlined in the story. So you need to look back at the text that you underlined in the story to help you answer this question. And question number 1 says, which statement best describes Layla at the beginning of the story? So we're trying to figure out what kind of person Layla is at the beginning of the story. So I want you to look back up at the text and look particularly at what the study buddy underlined for us. And I want you to make your answer choice. And whenever you make your answer choice, we're going to come back and discuss it together. So go ahead and do that for me now. Okay, so remember we had to describe Layla at the beginning of the story, and we used what the study buddy underlined for us to help us out. And remember, the study buddy underlined, the popular kids just wrote her off as that quiet girl. So, based on that piece of underlined text, we know that the answer has to be A. Layla is a quiet student who appreciates an orderly classroom. The popular kids, remember, labeled her as that quiet girl. And based on that, we know that she is a quiet student. She's a quiet student who appreciates an orderly classroom. We know she appreciates an orderly classroom because she's a little embarrassed by how her class is acting when Mr. Marrero is there to be their substitute teacher. So now let's look at the other answer choices so we can figure out why they are incorrect. So answer choice B says Layla enjoys chatting with her friends before class. So this one can't be correct because there's no textual evidence to back that up. We don't really know what Layla likes to do before class and if she likes to chat with her friends. There's nothing in the text that tells us that. So answer choice C, Layla likes to be the focus of attention in all of her classes. Well, if we know that Layla is a quiet girl and the popular kids label her as that quiet girl, and whenever she flicks the lights on and off, if her face is red because she's embarrassed, that tells me that she probably does not like to be the center of attention. She doesn't do things to draw attention to herself. So that's why answer choice C is incorrect. Now let's look at answer choice D. Layla dislikes the popular kids who ignore her. Okay, so there's no textual evidence that tells us that Layla dislikes the popular kids. Nowhere in the story is that mentioned. So this one, therefore, cannot be our answer choice. So the only one that works is A. Layla is a quiet student who appreciates an orderly classroom. Okay, so now let's go to number 2 and let's look at the hint box that's out to the side. Only one claim is directly supported by a specific detail in the story. So that tells us that only one answer choice is directly supported by details in the story. So there's only one answer choice that could be a potential for us. So let's look at what number 2 says and see if we can figure that out. Which sentence best states an important theme about human behavior as described in the substitute? So, which sentence best states an important theme? Remember, theme, guys, is the lesson the main character learns. And who's our main character? Layla. Layla is the main character. So we're trying to figure out what lesson Layla is learning. So look back up in your text and see what details you can find that support the answers below. And go ahead and make your choice. And when you come back, we're going to discuss. So go ahead, look back up at the text and make your answer choice now for me. Okay, so let's discuss. So hopefully you got the answer correct, and the answer is A. Choosing to take action requires courage. So, this is the only answer choice that is directly supported by details from the story. This is the only one that is supported. So, remember, we talked about theme and how theme was the lesson learned by the main character or the protagonist. And we know that Layla is our main character or protagonist. So, we're trying to figure out what lesson Layla has learned throughout the story. And answer choice A, choosing to take action requires courage, backs up the lessons that she is learning. So everything in the story is leading up to the moment where Layla is deciding to take action. She has to build enough courage to take action to help Mr. Marrero out. So, choosing to take action requires courage. Now, let's look at the other answer choices to figure out why they are incorrect. So, answer choice B, older people often have wisdom to share. Well, this may be true, but that theme is not supported by anything in the text. There's no textual evidence to back that up. The only thing from the text that could potentially work for that is the story that Mr. Marrero shares, but that's more of like an adventure story. That's definitely not something that has a lot of wisdom behind it. It's just an adventure story. So answer choice B cannot work for us. So answer choice C, a quiet person isn't necessarily a shy person. Well, this may be true, but this really has nothing to do with our story. This has no textual evidence to back it up. So that cannot be our answer. Answer choice D, being popular isn't as important as being kind. Okay, so this really has nothing to do with our story either. Layla doesn't have to make a choice between being popular and being kind. So that one is not our answer choice either. So the only one that works is answer choice A, choosing to take action requires courage. Okay, so now we are ready for our last question. And our hint says to choose the specific details that best support the theme of the story. And remember, theme is the lesson Layla learns. So, question number 3 says to select 2 pieces of evidence from the substitute that support your answer to question number 2. So, question number 2 tells us that the theme of the story is choosing to take action requires courage. So we have to select 2 pieces of textual evidence that support that theme. So the theme, remember, is choosing to take action requires courage. So we're trying to select which of these 2 pieces of evidence back up that theme. So go ahead, read through these pieces of textual evidence and select 2 that back up the theme. And whenever you do that, we're going to come back and discuss it together. So go ahead and select your answer choices now for me, guys. Okay, so let's discuss. So we have several pieces of textual evidence here. I'm going to read them to us, and then I'm going to tell you which ones are correct. So the first box says, him telling an amazing story about surviving an emergency landing. And we have the popular kids just wrote her off. And the third one says, that quiet girl. The fourth one says she wanted to keep talking, but she felt bad for Mr. Marrero. And then we have every classmate turned to stare at her. And then we have she knew that it was time to blend back in or help. And she took a deep breath. And lastly, tell us about the time when you were on a jet that crash landed in the ocean. Okay, so the 2 pieces of textual evidence that support the theme of the story are knew it was time to blend back in or help, and she took a deep breath. So these are the only 2 pieces of evidence that support the theme of choosing to take action requires courage. So this answer choice, she knew that it was time to blend back in or help, supports that theme because it lets us know that she's having to be brave to take action. So she's having to decide whether or not she's going to blend back in with the crowd or if she is going to take action, and that requires bravery. So that's how that answer choice works. And then she took a deep breath. So remember, this is one of the sections that we underlined in the text, and this is one of the moments when Layla is trying to decide to act differently. So this is whenever she is trying to summon her courage to help out Mr. Marrero. So those are the two pieces of textual evidence that support the theme of the story, which, remember, one more time, is choosing to take action requires courage. Okay, guys, hopefully you understood this, but if not, make sure to let me know, and I'll be more than happy to answer any question that you have. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end the video, and I hope you guys have a great afternoon.